What was it about the offense on Saturday that allowed it to execute so effectively throughout the game?
I think if you look at the last two games, there are a couple things that stick out that we've talked about not being there for a good bit of the season, and one is turnovers or ball security. If you look at it the opposite way, we didn't give the ball to the other team, and we hit some explosive plays in the pass game. And each of the last 2 weeks that's been the case. And in this game, as opposed to the previous game, we ran the ball better. So it was a combination of those two things. We held on to the ball, which gives you more opportunities to score points, obviously. But when you're an offense like ours and you're not trying to play with tempo and you give up opportunities, it impacts you in a major way. And if you look at some of the advanced analytics like points per possession and a number of things like that, I think you see a lot of things that have been in our favor that are trending up to an even higher level. And I think that's a big part of it, just doing a good job taking care of the football. And then, as I said, we hit some big plays in the past game. And it's another thing that's probably, I don't know if it's overlooked, but if you look at the numbers on number of explosive plays compared to points scored, part of that's intuitive, right? You have big plays, you're going to score more points, but the relative amount that it actually matters is higher than you might think, I guess.
Jeff, what do you see from Kansas State when you turn on the film?
A lot of what this defense is known for. I've played against them the last 3 years, and they're tough. They play extremely hard as any group that I've played against. Their effort and their toughness is exceptional. 10 out of 10. Their knowledge of the scheme is really high. A bunch of guys who have been playing a lot of football in that system, and they're doing more than they've ever done. Initially, I played these guys 3 years ago. They were running a system, I would say at that time, that was more similar to Iowa State than what it is now. And they still base out of the same personnel grouping and often the same front structure, but a lot more. There's a lot more there, a lot more pressure, a lot more types of pressure, and really they've become more and more aggressive each of the last 2 years, I think. And so that aggression combined with players who know what they're doing and play really hard is a really big challenge.
I'm curious, last year there was some success running the ball against Kansas State. Do you go back and look at that film?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've looked at as much film as I can without just completely not sleeping for the last 48 hours, and I've been close. Yeah, looking at what Kansas did last year, our film when I was at Baylor, and other teams who played them over the years and done well. Because when it's a tough defense and a unique defense like this, then you're trying to dig and scratch and find as many opportunities as you can to get first downs.
When you go against a defense that can do the 3-man front and then do the 4-man front too, how much pressure does that put on the offensive line to communicate well?
That part is a little bit of a challenge, but most people do that. I would say almost everybody you plays some form of 3-man and 4-man front. That's not all that atypical. What is unusual is they're stemming just before the snap, so changing the front from one front to the other, so it looks like it's going to be an odd front with 3 down, and they slide it over, and then it's an even front and they cover up both guards, or they start with their defensive ends wide, and then they tighten them up on the tackles and walk the linebackers up, and then it's all that combined with ball snapped, blitz patterns, guys running through gaps, cross blitz, twists, really challenging things for the offensive line to handle. So it's the combination of all that that's really hard. not necessarily just the difference between being in an even and up front.
They have the conference sack leader right now in Mott. Just what kind of challenge can he present to that O-line?
High motor guy, got a lot of respect for him. Really good with quick inside move, quick inside spin. That just, it's almost like you do everything you can to prepare for it, and then you don't realize till you get in the game. I remember last year, just the amount of time that we spent talking about that and trying to stop his inside rush moves, and then you get in the game, and you know, at some point it still wins, and you look at your tackle and you're like, look, I told you all week this is going to happen, but sometimes things happen in a game and it's faster than what you anticipated or what it felt like maybe when a scout team guy gave you that look.
I'm curious, week to week, do you feel like momentum for offense is a thing, or is that specifically maybe just within a game itself?
As a general statement,
Yeah,
or for our offense this season?
It could be for your offense this season, but maybe more generally, do you feel like things really do carry over? You know, they build week to week?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I think they do. I think they can. You know, if you're trending in the right direction, and I think we are. And, you know, I've been saying it all season. You know, I felt like we're right there. If we don't, you know, ifs and buts, you know, the sayings that go with that. But for a while, we were talking about all those things keeping us from being where we wanted to be. The last couple of weeks, we've kind of seen that. And I know we didn't win 2 weeks ago, but I'm still just drawing a point. If you don't do that other stuff, then it gives you a chance to score more points and win the game. And so, yes, I think we're trending in the right direction. I think that builds momentum, and, you know, most importantly, it builds confidence. And I've seen that go both ways. I've seen sometimes you have a team that's kind of up and down from week to week, but usually as the season wears on, either you go one way or the other, and it continues to move in that direction.
Devin, being so close to the Kansas career rushing record, you've been here now for about half a season. What value does he bring to your offense?
Oh man, I would start with Devin just by saying I think he's been one of the real stabilizing factors on our team. I really feel that way. I can think back to the very first game. We're playing Lindenwood, struggling a little bit early, turned the football over, some guys frustrated on the sideline. And I remember him talking to the whole group and feeling his passion. And, you know, I've felt this season how much this means to him. And when I say this, I think it's all of it. Do I think the rushing record matters to him? Yeah, and it should. Do I think playing here at Kansas matters to him? Maybe even a little bit more than most people, yeah. So there's a lot of pride there. And then obviously just what he's done on the field. And I said early in the season, or even before the season started, I had a lot of questions about him and our other running backs. And one of the points I made is, you know, how he needed to improve at just putting his foot in the ground and splitting two would-be tacklers and going to make an ugly 3 or 4 yards, and at times that might become more. I said he needed to improve as a blocker and as a receiver, and he's done all those things. And so really, really pleased with what he's done this season.
You were able to get the ball to a lot of different people in the last game, but that included the tight ends more than we've seen maybe with Jared catching those 2 touchdowns and Trevor having a big catch late in the game. Just, I guess, what can that do for the confidence of that group going forward?
You know, I think because we've got experienced players there, I think all those guys are confident that they can make plays when their number's called. It's just, you know, it's an interesting thing. You might go a game and the ball may never find you, and then all of a sudden, there it is. And you know, it's been that way certainly at receiver, with one guy having a big game, then another guy having a big game, and this game, yeah, it found the tight ends a little bit more, and that was good to see because they've worked really hard. I've been impressed with the whole group because I've kind of had to use 4 guys to make up for losing Mason. I really think that was a loss. You know, we talk a lot about losing Dirk and losing Pooney, and you know, I think that was certainly a big thing that has impacted our group and our offense. But I think losing Mason was a piece of it as well. And it's taken some time to get to the point where each of those guys can fill a piece of that void. And I think we're getting closer.
You mentioned Devin as a stabilizing force, and then you mentioned losing Cooney and Dirk. But for the offensive line specifically, has there been anyone who's been a stabilizing force in that sense? Whether that's with their level of play or just leadership?
In the offensive line or just on the rest of the offense?
Offensive line.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think maybe each guy in his own way, Mike Ford in a real sort of quiet confidence that just shows up every day but doesn't say a whole lot. Maybe Kobe and Bryce Cable do in a different way because they're guys who are more fiery and more emotional, and so you feel their passion every now and then. I think Logan, just in terms of how he's played, but you know, maybe a little bit different with each guy, but not one guy that sticks out.
When you look at Jalen's performance the last 2 games, he's looked kind of comfortable, I think, all season, and obviously lack of turnovers is a big thing. But is there anything schematically, or do you think it's just kind of comfortability and getting knocking off that rust?
I think most of it is the work that he's put in and our receivers have put in. I think that's most of it. I would like to say that the decisions that we've made as coaches to try to lean into his strengths and our other players' strengths have helped that as well. But I really got to give JD and the receivers that have worked really hard to get right with him and get in sync more so the credit for it.
How much is after? You talked about Skinner and him.
How much what?
Is after practice and on their own time. You talked about that last week with them and Skinner, but is that all of them? I mean, are you seeing a lot more of that?
Yeah, different guys at different times.
Yeah.
You know, that particular week, I think it was just really, really strong to see the game that Q had, and then to think back about the fact that every day after practice he was out there. You know, but yeah, there are different guys in different spots.
Sure.
Anybody else? All right, fellas.
Thanks, everyone.